just like when you open up your phone, you have an operating system that runs your applications. Like, me and you know that we're on iOS or whatever phone you might be on, Android. But like the apps don't need to say like, they're in the Apple Store and you know where to find them. And that's kind of the core product we're delivering.
Hyperliquid got two things extremely right. One is the core product, low latency, it just works. I think it's probably the best perps experience, which you could call decentralized out there. And the second thing is, and I think this is the biggest difference in comparison to Uniswap, is actually the token and the token buybacks.
I don't know if this is a flash in the pan. I don't know if this is longer term. But like, I can say my inbox has been pinged about like banks, again, looking at this stuff, again, payment provider.
If you look at the different and very few relevant L1s and like infrastructure plays, it pays off to be opinionated in terms of just like making some things canonical or pushing these forward more active.
Best trade of my life.
Yeah.
What?
Are you still in it?
No, I exited at Christmas. I think I like locked in at 23 or something. Not to brag on live TV. Anoma is, a retail, actually like a core retail platform.
Mike, how have you been?
GM, I've been good. Busy, you guys know, but just had a baby son, which has been a fruitful experience. A lot of hard work, but really nice. And also busy pedaling away at Anoma, getting ready for launch. Hopefully you've seen we've done a lot of good work and been busy in the public forum, getting ready for that launch, and excited to chat about it a bit.
Awesome, man. So I think last time we met at Token in Dubai. And
we did.
You mentioned a few things you were planning. I've seen the Kaito initiative has been started since. How's that going? How's that coming along?
It's good. I actually really like Kaito. It has a lot of low quality engagement, but also some like really good community building, like rapid community building. And I think as long as you pluck out the core group that cares there, it's kind of like Discord on steroids, because Discord's kind of like siloed. There's a lot of good like builders and interactions in Discord, but they're just kind of stuck in Discord land. Whereas like Kaito brings those into, I would say, more of a public forum. So you get like a little, people see that versus like, hey, I've done a big Discord campaign, which seems very siloed to me, but maybe I'm just not in Discord land that much.
Totally. I disconnected from Discord land quite a while ago because exactly like you said, it's so siloed and it's also very unorganized and it's very hard to keep up with all the conversations. I feel like Telegram is also difficult, but still doable. X is very manageable because it's public, but Discord has always been the most chaotic.
I think Discord is way overhated. Like,
really,
you can structure stuff there. You can set up different channels. I mean, yeah, if you're in a lot of servers, it's hard to like stay up to date with all the messages. I think for communities that are interested in a certain niche of crypto, it's much more suitable than to have a Discord server as a project yourself, because these tend to accumulate really quickly and then nobody is really engaging a lot. So yeah, but maybe on the note of Kaito Yaps, like what's the basic thesis behind it to start a yapping campaign from a project's perspective?
I mean, basic thesis is, the same as a lot of aspects of growing a Discord where, right? Like you're trying to grow a community, your community wants to participate in your token, you need some kind of distribution method, you want to put something into the machine to get something out. And it depends what your metrics are. I think in the current meta or state of the market, people want to see interactions on Twitter and people talking about you. And like I said, you bootstrap two things in tandem. One, you get people talking about you, which is great because more people just see Anoma and then start coming to the project to learn more, yada, yada. But you also do grow a genuine core community that, are doing stuff for us and hosting AMAs and asking if they can get involved in the ecosystem and talking about tech opportunities. So there are, there are a lot of gems to pluck out of the Kaito campaigns. I have no complaints there. I think there was some changes a couple weeks ago that created a little bit of a headache just in terms of like who's getting rewarded and is it like skewed towards KOLs or small accounts. So I'm just trying to like contextualize that and work through it. And it seems the algo changes a lot, so I wish it was just more stable of like who they want to reward. But I know there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Yeah, so that's kind of where we are with Kaito. I would recommend it to projects though, to be honest, who want to bootstrap a community quickly.
Maybe we take a step back and zoom out a little bit. Mike, maybe you can tell us like just a little bit about your story, about your history, and how you landed at Anoma.
For sure. Been in the space for a while. I was a Polkadot builder, a little bit back in the day, unfortunately for me to be around that long. But I built Centrifuge, which was probably like, I would say the first project that really seriously tried to bring real world assets on chain. We were a bit before our time. Sorry, like we did, grind away at a topic that nobody was interested in for many years, and all of a sudden they cared, which was like a really nice experience. I think some of the early expressions of bringing credit instruments and creating debt pools on chain, which is now growing exponentially. Did some consulting work in between, like built a real world asset market with Aave, worked on Polkadot a bit more with Web3 Foundation, and a bunch of side projects, and then really wanted to get full time into something again. And I saw Anoma as, I'll be honest, like one of the first genuine attempts to do something new and radical at the kind of like developer, like DevX application layer. There's a lot of like kind of forks of forks, or like base layer tech, like optimizing for some small spec and then just like forking all of DeFi and redeploying it and being like, this is going to change the world. Noma seemed 2 years ago like a crazy experiment that was really trying to rethink the way that we were interacting, with blockchains by delivering an OS. I think now it's becoming a lot more real. We're getting into building real stuff, and I'm excited about the next few months, but that's kind of why I joined them, really crack team. So yeah.
Speaking of crack team, so when I was interviewing at the ICF, one of the people who interviewed me was actually Chris Goes,
Oh, really?
and I was like thrilled after the interview. I was like, whoa, I want to work with these people. Like this is very, very inspirational. He was building and designing IBC, and I think a few months after I joined, he left. And it was kind of quite a bummer, but we had like a very short overlap, which from my side was great to work with. But speaking of Anoma, so my last understanding and definition before the hype of intents and everything as a user intent, Anoma was kind of ahead of its time describing this generalized intent system. But maybe like for the non so tech savvy user, can you describe what Anoma is and what like generalized intent system means? Like what can I do with it as a user?
Yeah. And like, yeah, without diving down the rabbit hole, I think we've come a long way. And somewhere along those years, like the word intents got usurped and became something else, which like became this word for like cross-chain swaps, essentially, cross-chain limit orders, which is like not the way we were imagining it or like implementing it. From a user perspective, Anoma is an operating system. So just like iOS on your phone, it's a home for applications. And like the whole purpose is that it abstracts away the complexities of like a crypto stack underneath and builds a dev platforms tailor built for applications. So this sits natively cross-chain, irrespective of which chain you're settling to. When you write an application, you don't need to worry about like smart contract work, which is quite niche and takes long development cycles. We already have a solver set underneath that satisfies the intents or the order flow. So you don't need to like bootstrap liquidity and DeFi and give away a bunch of tokens just to get users. If you have an application that people want to use, you can plug right into the Anoma solver set on day one, and liquidity will be there. So it's like really, for me, solving for like three things: user UX of like, you say what you want, not how you get there. So you don't need to like approve tokens and pay for gas and sign transactions, all this complex shit that my mom could never do.
Yeah.
But also on the DevX side, you don't need to spend all this time with like the niche of smart contracts and complexities of like transaction trace. You can just build applications quickly, like even vibe code them and have access to intent flow, right? Or liquidity. So that's the thesis.
Could you maybe take a very common capital flow, transaction flow that we are seeing in DeFi right now, and how it would change with intents implemented, just for the non-technical people like me to get a better understanding how it would actually impact the user experience?
Yeah, for sure. So I think like at the most like simple level, if you think about like using Uniswap, right? Like I want to trade some new token XYZ for ETH. I have to open my MetaMask, connect it, approve token XYZ, check what the gas is, sign a transaction, and settle it all to my wallet. Like, it's quite cumbersome. It's not very like intuitive. Whereas like we want to bring that UX to like one click, right? You click like, I want to do this. Here's a button. It's pre-approved. Gas is satisfied. So that's like the most basic user flow thing. Under the hood, that's because we have like a solver network that are essentially competing for that order flow, which will also help, optimize things like best execution and price and make sure you're getting the best liquidity from the best venue. That's all kind of the under the hood stuff. But from like a user perspective, it's more about like a one click UX versus this like janky, approving this whole way of getting from A to B.
Yeah.
So in stupid words, it's just automating things.
Yeah. Yeah. It's automating and abstracting, right? Like there's so much shit that you don't need to see or interact with in crypto, especially as we try to think about broadening this,
Yeah.
to real world use cases. And yeah, that's what it's all about.
And maybe just to make it like a little bit more tangible, can you describe maybe like 3 use cases which where there would be some automation or coordination, or as you said, better UX with Anoma? And then is it like, because you mentioned Anoma as an OS, is it that the Anoma OS enables these apps to be built and they will eventually be built by other teams? Or do you kind of vertically integrate the full suite and you're going to have a wallet, you're going to have everything basically? Or how can I
Yeah.
think about that?
So I'll answer the last one first. And I'm a student of market metas, and I always try and see what's happening and take it for what you will. But I think the like 2017, 2021 Ethereum ecosystem play is kind of dead, where you like recruit 100 semi-interested builders to build a bunch of stuff, and give them grants and hope for the best, and then they kind of reproduce stuff that's already existed. I think for us, we do have an ecosystem of teams, and they are unique in building a lot of stuff, but we are trying to hone in and build some of it as well, like more vertically integrated, looking at things like Hyperliquid, which really, built a successful app and then an ecosystem around it. So we're trying to focus on the things that matter. And where Anoma can be great and really showcase our technology and then build around that. So I would say it's like a deep and complete versus a shallow and wide approach. So less of the throwing darts and more of like what really complements this stack. And maybe I'll like just jump on the go-to-market there. What the beauty is like as an operating system, Anoma was built to optimize existing base layers. So it's not only like its own siloed ecosystem where it's like everyone needs to jump from Ethereum and come to Anoma land and do something. It's like we can put an overlay on top of existing liquidity and just make a much cleaner go-to-market because there's already users there and a product. We're just making it better. A simple example is we could make something cross-chain, or we could put a peer-to-peer exchange layer on top of a DEX, right? So, as an on-chain trader, you want to swap 1% in and out. Why not do that P2P instead of hitting the chart, right? You can easily do that with an intent. You could just post like, I want to sell this up to this price and float it into a gossip network and find someone on the other side.
Yeah.
Which like, I mean, would really enhance the on-chain experience for a lot of people. And this can be deployed on existing infrastructure, which means that we don't need to bootstrap all the liquidity and usership ourselves. It can just enhance what exists. So
That's
like,
actually, yeah. Sorry, like that's actually a super interesting example. I want to go just a little bit deeper on that. So one kind of like you mentioned the 1%, which is some size, right? It's like enough size to nuke charts. And one thing I always envisioned I want to have is basically describe some sort of market making intent. And to give you a very specific example is I don't have a time horizon. I have like a percent of this coin. And just like for every $100 in buy volume, sell $10 until I exit my position, regardless of the chart or the market cap or the time. Is that something I could use Anoma for? Like, is that an intent
100%.
I could? And then who would, like, for example, I have my 1%, right? And this 1% has to leave my wallet to go somewhere. Otherwise, it would, in my head, require signatures every time because I control my wallet. Like, I know we don't want to go too technical, but just like roughly, like, what would happen to that 1%? Where would it go? Is that kind of like living in the solver's network then until the order is completed, or how can I think about that?
Yeah, exactly. And I think you nailed like a lot of points, and I don't want to like dive too far down that rabbit hole, like of getting technical, but like intents lend themselves much more to like expressivity and like natural language of like, hey, I want to do this. Can I put this order into a network and can someone fill it for me? Right. Versus like if you have a rigid UI, it's like you can only have one input. So as long as there is a solver that can execute that, it's like you can put in much more free-form inputs and someone could pick this up and say, hey, I'm going to execute it, right? Like, so stuff like that is definitely what we're looking at. And it would be similar to like a Jupe DCA, right? Where you send it, you know, it's in like an escrow thing or available, and then it would just execute your order over time. And that's like the exact, I mean, one product we're looking at and pretty much borrowing the kind of the Jupe UI experience and overlaying some things specifically for on-chain traders so that people can experience better fills, you know, not signal on chain their activity so widely and help them, you know, do these kind of things better, which I think have been hindrance to on-chain trading.
So then I think, let me try to summarize and you tell me if that's roughly correct. So Anoma is going to enable much more granular description of so-called intents, which could be anything. But in the end, you will require teams or builders to create those end-to-end experiences of which you yourself want to actually own the core experiences because you don't just want to leave it to the ecosystem like the Ethereum play. Is that kind of roughly it?
Yeah, and I totally whiffed on the generalized intent thing, but the generalized intents means that we use intents for every part of the system versus just this like limited definition that's kind of proliferated through the space.
Yeah.
But yeah, in some examples, we want to own it end to end and we'll, you know, bootstrap the solver ourselves, deliver the infrastructure for use cases that we think are really strong that we can kind of use as exemplars. And yeah, you nailed it. So we'll find,
maybe just the last thing I'm going to say here, because like one of the questions is always like, oh, like why does this take so long always? And I think like the thing that is a little bit unfair oftentimes is I could pick a single use case. Let's pick the DCA use case and build that centralized, right? I could say, hey, like I have liquidity pockets on the three most relevant chains that I centrally own myself, but I'm going to provide a service that allows you to DCA from any asset to any asset. I'm going to give you like a real-time experience, but I am custodying your funds and I'm doing this in a centralized fashion, and I only do this use case. Whereas Anoma is like, first of all, there's a solvers network, so it's kind of a distributed, more permissionless design. Plus, you can easily extend from this single use case to like 5-6 other use cases which are adjacent or completely different even. And yeah, that's why it takes so long, I assume. Speaking of which, how long?
It does.
Yeah, we've seen a couple of questions about like the next testnet iterations and mainnet when it's coming up, when we posted about the upcoming stream. So yeah, I think a lot of people in the community are quite excited for that.
Yeah. So look, I will say, you know, in crypto speak, Anoma's been building for a while. In like normal technology land, I think like 3-4 years to delivering your end product is long, but like with the amount of research and stuff we've executed, I wouldn't say it's egregious. So like, yeah, we need to rush to market and it's our time, but I'm still like proud of a lot of work we did and we solved a lot of hard problems along the way. Mainnet, testnet. So we have a testnet live right now that's educational, I hope fun, interactive, and teaches people about the Anoma stack and what it is, because it is, you know, a new paradigm, a new UX. In tandem, we have a DevNet live where builders are writing against Anoma nodes and building applications. I don't know if you saw recently, but we have started to deploy protocol adapters to testnets, which is the way to get to Anoma land from EVM chains in the first instance. So we're going to launch with Ethereum mainnet base, ARB, and potentially other EVM chains if and when they become interesting. Roadmap for additional non-EVM chains is next year. And I can say, I don't want to give a date because that's the curse of giving a date, but I hope in that you can see mainnet is coming in a very reasonable time frame from here.
So is winter, but maybe to dive in just a little bit more, is there any type of intent or behavior that may or may not be beneficial for some airdrop? I'm asking because I think everyone is asking themselves the same question. I don't know how much alpha we can get here, but is there going to be an airdrop? Is that something you're looking into?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think it's par for the course. We're going to do an airdrop. I think we've been pretty transparent actually about what's important to us. I'm super active in the community. I push out, all the time that it's a feedback loop of we need people talking about us to bring more people into the project. Obviously, we did a Yapper campaign. We announced rewards for that. We obviously, did a testnet campaign that was well supported. You can read between the lines. And we have our core Discord community that's been around and supporting us for some time. So I think those are the community aspects that we're focused on. We're also launching an NFT collection. It's called the Shrimpers. I don't know if you've seen them. I can definitely get you guys a few. I think it's had an overwhelming reception thus far. So I'm excited about that. And, let's see, we haven't made any commitments to that one, but, reading between the lines, and that's where we're at.
That's amazing. And from a builder's perspective, you've been in the space for a long time. You worked in the Polkadot ecosystem before that. Is there an airdrop or a launch, from Uniswap to Osmosis, Celestia? I'm not too familiar with how the Polkadot launches went, but is there kind of like a project in the last years you would look at and say, hey, that was actually a decent launch?
I mean, yeah, for sure. I think Celestia went really well. That was probably one of the most exciting, multifaceted, I think they won on a lot of fronts for a long time with good narratives around the airdrop and staking, good technical narrative and good team execution on the campaigns, the memes, light node, and modular, yada, yada. I think more recently, the Sync's launch seems pretty strong, surprisingly strong. I think they're kind of, I would say, like Celestia, in the Anoma camp, come from a research background, building deeper tech and then trying to commercialize it, and include retail and make things that people understand. So that one definitely went well. Yeah, looking at that closely.
No, I fully agree.
I don't know what you guys think. What else has gone well?
I would even say Celestia almost ignited and started the recent bull market we are in to some extent. Yeah. That's how it felt like. No, totally agree. I asked the question because I think there's more negative examples than positive examples. I think most teams botch their launch and airdrop, then they get it right. Maybe there are externalities which are not even the team's fault, such as timing and so on. But I was just curious, kind of,
it's such a double-edged sword with because obviously with the airdrop, everybody wants more tokens, but in just the theory of life, the more tokens you give out to more people, the lower the price of those tokens will become, because just the data suggests that there's a 90% sell rate, right?
Yeah.
So it's people want more tokens, but then if you give tons of tokens, then they sell them and then they're worth less for everybody. And it's we're trying to and I'll be transparent, we're going to give an airdrop, but we also want to space it out and think about people who are around for a while and, which builders stick around and which are just mercenaries. And how can people haven't evolved the airdrop meta. They're stuck in the mud again from something that Ethereum set almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're we need to recreate this ad nauseum.
Oh God. So I think if you ask me, Hyperliquid was probably one of the good ones, a good example. And the other thing I want to add, Max, you're smiling because we had some Odyssey with Filament a while back, which was a project we worked on airdrops and distribution. But I think
the Filament guys, of course.
So the thing is kind of, I'm not even sure which one is the best one, but you have this one-off airdrop, which does a couple things. It leads to a good amount of distribution, which is especially important for decentralization and governance, if that's something you care about. It also leads to price discovery. So if you want to have kind of like sell pressure, you want to have it right off the bat, other than like a slow bleed over multiple years, right? Versus kind of a more rational approach, which is you're going to incentivize long-term behavior. You're going to emit the tokens not one-off, but maybe over a longer period of time, again, based on long-term behavior, such that the 90% selling for free riders or people that are just like in a toxic way farming this, they don't get rewarded too much. And I honestly don't know which one is better. I tend to come back to the former. Just like, do it and then let it out and then build up from there, as opposed to the other way around. On the other hand, that requires a strategic reserve to be able to fund community initiatives continuously, which, these are kind of my 2 cents on that.
I would say though, like the thing with something like Hyperliquid, or even before its time, like Uniswap, right? Great airdrop, like, genuine users get a ton of tokens. Say what you will about Hyperliquid, like, I'm not here to opine on them. Realistically, it's an app, in my view, that like built some stuff around it to look un-app-like, but it's a perp stacks, right? I know they have an EVM and some things, but yet to be seen. But they have a successful app that's generating fees, just as Uniswap had a successful app that was like already kind of ingrained and people could see that business model. I think more is like a developer platform, which like a lot of the base layers are, especially for us. We don't have a finite end picture on day one where it's like, this is the chain, this is all it will ever be. Like, we have a quite complex roadmap. There's lots of functionality. Hopefully the apps that launch after on top of us gain some traction. So you haven't really seen it all on day one. So I think it's hard to do that giant liquidity dump up front when there's still too much to be seen. Yeah. So trying to be balanced, like I'm trying to be fair. And I know a lot of people get sucked down the road of, hey, we want to make everyone happy and it's impossible. So we just got to do, what's best for like long-term survival, but also reward the people that have been, with us and that are going to support us.
Since you mentioned that Anoma, with putting intents on top of existing chains and applications, you're going to kind of reunify liquidity and just make apps more accessible. So also help these with adoption. How do you plan to get adoption for Anoma itself? Like, is there any necessity for people to build on top of it, to like build out infrastructure that can be used? Or is your target group essentially just the current end user of DeFi applications or like other stuff that is available in crypto, and they just use you as kind of the infrastructure and the layer on top to access the things that they're already enjoying and using?
I think it's twofold. Like, again, student of the metas in the market, like we are trying different things. I am personally most excited about what I've branded as this like horizontal go-to-market, which is just upgrading current experiences. So deploying on top of AMM liquidity, whether that's like AMM or perp dexes or just dex liquidity, and making it better, whether that's, having like the ability to quietly exit positions or P2P matching or enable cross-chain. It just makes, meeting the users where they are, right? I'm much more excited about that overlay. We're doing the same thing with stablecoins, with Anoma Pay, which we'll be announcing this week. But we're not going to try and launch our own payments play like D2C, on-off ramp merchants. We're going to go to existing chains and let them like leverage the parts of the Anoma stack that are great and that we know where we've done the hard research and that can really benefit their offering. So we're going to like meet the users, where the rubber meets the road, where they are, prove out the applications, make it easy to use Anoma. And over time, we can transition to more of an Anoma native ecosystem where it's just like an Anoma app and you can jump there, but also want to make that quite easy. We have a product called the Portal, which, we're really imagining something like an iOS, like a phone screen where your apps live and you have wallet balances. I think you could think about it in another word as like a super app where you can access Web3 from and the stuff you love. So that's all in the cooker. No promises on day one. Don't hold me till, but
Yeah,
that's where we're going.
I I do want to comment a little bit on Hyperliquid and what you said there. I actually think Hyperliquid got two things extremely right. One is the core product, low latency, it just works. I think it's probably the best perps experience, which you could call decentralized out there. And the second thing is, and I think this is the biggest difference in comparison to Uniswap, is actually the token and the token buybacks, right? I think Uniswap was always in this weird limbo where it's a government's token, Uniswap Labs versus this. Where do the revenues go? There's a huge like legal thing. Whereas
Yeah.
Hyperliquid, 97.5% buyback or whatever, and the token just
Yeah.
goes up. So, and that in conjunction with us being in an actual like app cycle and not this infrastructure layer one cycle anymore, which I don't know if it's true, but you could argue we are. How do you think about that?
Yeah. I mean, and we've been around long enough that I would say that it's like, I don't think people always wanted to do what Uniswap did and have this nebulous fee switch and make it very unclear. But stuff like securities law used to be something that I spent a lot more time on to be like,
Very true.
and this is honest to God, like, last cycle, if you handed me Hyperliquid as in its structure today and said, run this, I wouldn't do it. Right. Like I would be very worried about running an unregistered securities exchange. I would be very worried it wasn't decentralized enough to like pass the sniff test or the Howey test. I would have these considerations in mind. I think we've moved quite far from that. And obviously, like we're going to be nimble and take advantage of the same window that we see opening in the market. But I do think times have changed.
Would you say Trump and Melania token played a role in that?
I mean, I think Trump's wider efforts to, I don't even know, no comment live of what he's trying to pull off. But I think, he's deregulated the industry significantly. That was always the fear, right? It was like the SEC was, if you were seen to be operating an unregulated securities exchange,
Yeah.
you'd be in a lot of trouble. And as a DeFi builder from last cycle, like no word of a lie, this was shit I thought about quite a lot.
Yeah. No, I'm in the same boat. We were thinking about like how can we solve this problem, and usually the solution to this problem was somewhere along the lines of, okay, we have to have at least 3 entities, one doing the legal wrapper, one doing the issuance, one doing the governance, one doing the operational stuff. And you ended up with this mess just because you had to, because that is what law firms advised you to do. I don't know what the state is today. I assume you probably still need some of that, especially with regards to, I don't want to call it decentralization theater, but in a way it is that. So yeah, I totally hear you.
So the way I think about it now, though, maybe I'll just like opine on this topic a tiny bit, is like, I look at, so the forward-facing product now, in my view, has become a mosaic of geo-arb, reg-arb, and securities-arb, right? Where you're essentially running unregulated finance, cross-border, pushing the limits of what you can do, especially on a retail-facing finance products. And this is true even with like stable coins and stuff, right? Like they're just like pushing them out into economies and yada, yada. But my view is actually decentralization as a concept is what gives these lasting powers, like through administrations. Because I'm a believer like the pendulum swings, right? Like probably the next admin, if I was running for president in the States, I would make crypto like, if I was a Democrat, I would talk about it negatively. I'd be like, we're going to regulate this shit because the other side wants it deregulated, and people pick that up, like people realize and think about that.
Yeah.
So I actually think like having the decentralization switch gives this technology like persistence through regulatory regimes. Like you can walk away and be like, hey, this network is operating with or without me.
Yeah. Totally.
And I think that's how I'm thinking about it more now, is like, hey, someone tries to shut down Hyperliquid, they decentralize the validators and walk away and say, hey, this is still operating. Just we're not here to do it. So yeah, that's how I'm looking at the pieces today.
Is Anoma to any extent contributing to like the resilience of the permissionlessness of existing crypto infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, like Anoma again, it was, born out of last cycle. It's student of decentralization, like, working on full stack decentralization at every point. Does that mean we're going to launch with these elements? Like, definitely not. Like, we want to build user experience. We want to make it as easy as possible to use over time. Will we enable these to persist? Absolutely. Right. Like, we will, enable this network to persist, hopefully long after we're working on it and regardless of what government regime thinks about it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Cool. We covered a lot of ground. Are there any other questions from the community, Max? Anything standing out?
Not so far. I mean, the ones that I've seen, they all centered about around the upcoming launches. Maybe, I mean, you gave a rough timeline, but could you maybe tease a little bit what new features will be unlocked with the next test nets and then also with the mainnet? Like, for example, me personally, I interact with a lot of DeFi power users. I'd consider myself one. Like, once Anoma goes live, how am I going to be able to use it?
Yeah. So we will be having some product announcements this week, which will be some of the premier applications that the Anoma team is backing ourselves. I'm looking at a two-pronged thing. One is on-chain problems, and you'll see this coming out. We've talked about some of them on this call. So, I mean, reading between the lines, you can assume what that product will do. And stablecoins is the other. We talked about that too on this call. So these will be core Anoma offerings. Again, we're going Trojan horse. We're going to meet users where they are. So you will be able to use Anoma as an overlay on existing like flow that you have and not have to like jump to some unique world and do it all from ground up. Additionally, there are a lot of teams building on the Anoma stack. I think there's 25 in our initial cohort, and they'll be like rolling out. I wouldn't expect them all there for day one, right? I think we need to enable functionality and then they're going to deploy on top, but that should be coming, over the next few months as we roll out. So I think that's what we're doing. What will mainnet look like? It will look like an Anoma protocol adapter deployed on Ethereum mainnet and L2s, which will let you move through those environments. And utilize those products I just talked about. So we're looking at some stuff for on-chain dexes, and stablecoins is our first two kind of big use cases that are the two kind of different pillars of the market as we see them, like real world adoption and pushing those use cases, and pure on-chain trading and pushing that to the next level.
Nice. On the side of dexes, for example, one thing that I always wanted to be able to do is that, like, you can essentially get paid for entering a position on dexes if you just set a concentrated liquidity pool whenever you want to buy the respective asset. But if it's like, for example, you want to buy ETH at 4,200, then you'd have to monitor the pool all the time, that once price wicks through 4,200, that you close the pool afterwards so it doesn't swap back into all USDC in case it goes above 4,200 again. So is that, for example, something I could automate with Anoma right at the start?
Not a feature that we're specifically calling out for day one, but I can shoot some research your way. Like, we have a DEX yet unnamed, so I'll call it redacted DEX, that is quite a functional club that has a lot of these things addressed. So, bringing a number of, and like, I used to be a trader in TradFi. So like also taking some of those learnings. So like, honestly, I know crypto always thinks it's in front, but it's incorporating a lot of features that exist in like, various aspects of TradFi and like how you would trade these things. So I think thinking about bringing some of those to like an intense DEX. Yeah. That's more V1 stuff, as it's a little more complicated.
You earlier mentioned something along the lines of the Ethereum playbook of running a whole ecosystem, having like a couple teams building on that is kind of dead. And I heard another interview with, I think, Magmer from Skip ICL, who's like running Cosmos ecosystem now. He said something along the lines of like, they moved away from the EVM as they realized it would cost them roughly 20 million per year to maintain it, all things considered, with infra, Teams building dApps,
Mhm.
paying the Etherscan license, paying all these licenses for all the integrations of the other dApps and so on. So if you're not doing that, then as a user, how will I know I'm interacting with Anoma, or will I even know I am?
I don't think you need to know. Like, it's an operating system, right? Just like when you open up your phone, you have an operating system that runs your applications. Like, me and you know that we're on iOS or whatever phone you might be on, Android. But like the apps don't need to say like, they're in the Apple store and you know where to find them. And that's kind of the core product we're delivering.
So if that's the case, if to the average user this will be abstracted and it will just happen behind the scenes
Mm-hmm.
through routing or because it has the best execution or whatnot, then how do you think about like this being compelling to the end user as an investment, for example? And just to like drive, or just to like give one example, I think what Celestia got right is this like modular thesis, where we're like, oh, like I don't really know how this DA thing works, but it's modular and kind of makes sense, right? So what's the equivalent for Anoma, or is there an equivalent? Do you even think about that? Because one risk I see, if you're not a brand in front of the user, then like why would the user even invest in the token, or is that not something you optimize for?
Yeah, I mean, again, I would say looking at some launches, like Celestia is a B2B widget, right? Like it's selling DA into infra projects. A Succinct is selling proving services for proofs that may or may not exist yet. But you know what I mean? Like a B2B kind of sales option that they've turned into a retail product. They've made people excited about it at a retail level. I think Anoma is, a retail, actually like a core retail platform, because like I said, like, you know, even if you think about your phone, it's not like you forget about Apple just because you like Instagram and WeChat, right? You still see the logo they live on. And that's why we're building an experience like the Anoma portal, which, I'm thinking of more like a super app where you have, hey, I want to do all these things through it. And it can be a really seamless experience. But definitely we're going to keep the Anoma branding like front and center in a lot of this stuff. And I think the token story is quite exciting. Like, I think, again, thinking with my modern hat on, we're no longer so worried about stuff like buybacks and earning fees and that kind of stuff. So borrowing off the Hyperliquid model to actually generate some revenue and make this thing sustainable. To your point of running an EVM chain, we're not running the blockchain. So we don't have those underlying burdens, right? Of paying Etherscan and bootstrapping a validator set. That's someone else's problem. We're just optimizing the blockchain experience. So I think we can have a scenario where we can make quite an attractive token setup.
So if you're not running a blockchain, then who runs your technology you're building? Is that the solvers, or is that the other blockchain validators? Like, who runs this?
The other validators, right? Like we settle to the underlying. I mean, that's one of the places where probably the most of our research went into, is achieving heterogeneous settlement across the various blockchains or security domains. And that was like a core thesis of building Anoma. It's like VMs or blockchains are difficult to build applications on. Like it sucks. It's so hard. We spent 10 years like grinding away at building applications on top of chains, when really, building an environment for applications that can settle to chains is much easier. So that's where Anoma comes in. So we borrow their validator set, and frankly, like whatever front end can borrow the security assumptions. So if you don't really care about centralization or validators, you can just say settle in the cheapest way possible, right? Like that's probably what your average person on the street wants, is like, find me the best route that is cheap and fast.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's kind of like why Jupiter works so well. It's like it has a bunch of wallet integrations. It's like it finds you the best routes, it finds you the best execution, and it's not even that sophisticated. Like when I'm deep into projects and I know where the liquidity pockets are, I looked at the route and it did something like 80% from Radium, 20% from Orca, just to give an example, right? But I know that there was like other liquidity pockets on Meteora. There was like, I don't know, another venue I forgot. So I was like, this thing is good, but I manually kind of was able to find a better route. So I was like, yeah, this thing is very important. And I think it makes all the difference in the world, especially if you are a frequent trader, which is, by the way, another thing I'm very interested in. So you mentioned you traded equities. Did that experience, was that any beneficial to you in your work with Anoma or personally, like trading crypto?
I think so. Like I worked at a hedge fund. Ultimately, it was a bank. Like it was like trading long short equity. Like I got into crypto through markets, and like I was a rarer beast a long time ago. Like there was not that many people looking. Like a lot of people were building technology. Most, I would say, 90% of people were devs. You would kind of just launch a token into the ether, and it would go up mostly at that time, and people were always happy. And it was like very green fields, and I spent a lot of time thinking about like the markets, and I really got in during DeFi summer was when I really became active full time, because I saw those parallels to like financial applications. And I was like, oh, I understand these. I can help like model liquidity pools on chain and build stuff like Centrifuge, when really before that, it was really just a dev playground. Like now I mean, say what you will, or if you love or hate it where the market is today, but as we move more towards like, I would say real world use cases, the market's become more professionalized, times have changed a little bit. I actually think it's become more and more relevant to like my experience as we start thinking about these products. And, having used professional grade financial products, I can definitely have a view on what needs to be done and where we need to get to make things more efficient. So yeah, I
Mm.
hope so.
I mean, the combination of Anoma being sort of a very B2C, B2 retail centric product, and given your background and the native understanding of these financial systems, are you opinionated at all about the path where kind of the financial primitives of crypto or also consumer crypto are about to be headed? Or are you trying to be opinionated about that with Anoma? Like, do you want to push certain verticals, or is it a completely unopinionated infrastructure layer on top that just eases UX wherever possible?
Again, think the like mindset of we're just an infra layer and we don't support anything specifically, and we're egalitarian and don't want to make any choices is probably a bit dated. That being said, it's an open and permissionless platform. You can build whatever the hell you want. I'm not here to stop you, but like we have resources, we have team members, we have me. I'm excited about stuff that I want to push, and we're going to push what we think A, showcases the technology, B, what users want, and C, what we think can, actually earn revenue and bring this thing forward as a sustainable project. So like, yeah, we'll spend our time on these kind of use cases for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a much more mature approach than this like pseudo unopinionated behavior that you had in a lot of L1s and like infrastructure plays, especially in the last cycle. Like the end result of that was ending up with 20 different dexes, 20 different lending markets, all vampire attacking and fragmenting liquidity off another, and it just made user experience terrible. And like nobody was ever happy with one project for a long time because all they did was giving out incentive tokens which were dumped immediately, and like it kind of propelled
Yeah.
everything towards zero. And I think by now, if you look at the different and very few relevant L1s and like infrastructure plays, it pays off to be opinionated in terms of just like making some things canonical or pushing these forward more actively than out.
Yeah. And I think you nailed it there, is like getting the apps that matter forward instead of worrying about like what technology becomes enshrined in the stack, and more thinking what apps we can support and push. Absolutely.
Cool. No, these are fantastic insights on Anoma. Super excited personally to see it live and kind of in action, whether it's in my wallet or in a dApp that uses it behind the scenes. Maybe again, taking a step back, zooming out a little bit. What else do you see in the market? Like, what is the meta right now? We had obviously like ICOs, NFTs, DeFi, and this cycle was weird. We had like meme coins, we had AI, we had ICM, which I don't even know if it's a thing, but like, what do you see in the market right now besides Anoma? Like, do you sometimes zoom out and look at like other things that are going on? Like, what's interesting there?
Yeah. I mean, I think the market, like, is super interesting because there's this like new influx of interest, like genuine TradFi interest. Like, I don't know if this is a flash in the pan. I don't know if this is longer term, but like I can say my inbox has been pinged about like, you know, banks again looking at this stuff, again, payment providers, like there, you know, and we've been here before, like, or I've been around long enough that I've seen this part of the cycle happen before. So I'm not gonna like be like, hey, we finally cracked the nut and you know, stable coins are gonna be everywhere and our tech's gonna be absorbed by banks and regular people and proliferated through retail and society. I don't know. But I think there is a very interesting vein happening there. I think there's some interesting stuff happening around stablecoins for sure. And like, I'm interested to see how that expands. The on-chain stuff is, you know, it's always been the same. Like people look at like meme coins and don't realize that NFTs were meme coins. And before NFTs, like DeFi Ponzus were like the same thing. It's just like part of the culture. And I don't feel like that's like very different than like sports betting or something. Like people like to gamble on things that they like to engage with. And in this fact, you know, you're engaging with meme coins because they're fun. Like I like the sticker packs, I like the communities, I like the ride, you know, just like I might bet on a football game because I like the teams that are playing. I look at them like that. Like obviously it's not serious technology, but it's part of the culture and depends, you know, people, yeah, I think they read too much into like what it means about the space and they forget like the broader context.
So in the end, it's just like hot air rises, you say.
Hot air rises. That was my thesis. Best trade of my life.
Yeah. Okay, here's actually...
Are you still in it?
What?
Are you still in it?
No, I exited at Christmas. I think I like locked in at 23 or something, but not to brag on live TV.
Very nice.
Yeah. That's impressive. That's amazing.
Are
200K.
Are you still actively trading the markets these days?
Every day looking, you know, I think the markets are very lively now. Frankly, I'm an on-chain guy, so I wish on-chain was a bit more active than it is. It's like become quite hard and feels very like forced now in like some narrow narratives, which I don't want to draw too many parallels, but it reminds me of kind of like the late cycle NFTs when it went, you know, from like early organic, like things were janky, mints took a long time. You could get into like the end when it was like whitelist factory, like, you know, all professionalized, like with bots and everything. And that's kind of where on-chain feels today. So I do think we need a bit of a meta renew on-chain to like get people excited, but you know, big Hyperliquid user.
Of all the on-chain kind of subsectors right now, is there anything standing out to you as either being as close to organic as possible or like super optimized, botted, and super inorganic?
Where are things happening right now? I mean, I'm probably for better or for worse, I'm still quite active on Solana. You know, I think it's been through many iterations. We've tried different things. Some have been exciting. It's getting a little bit repetitive and probably like, you know, prescriptive now with where it's at. But I'm excited about that. I'm excited about some of like the Hype EVM stuff, seeing some new DeFi infrastructure there coming up. Let's see. There's also a lot of action on base again. Like I'm tepidly intrigued to see where the Coinbase thing goes with Airdrop and what happens there. And if there's like generally more retail onboarding to the on-chain space. I don't know. What are you guys excited about?
I mean, Hyperliquid, it's a great ecosystem. You have a lot of people who are very active, who have at least a little bit of size and who are very DeFi and trading native. So I think in terms of like these playgrounds with people who are like-minded as you and I think that's the place to be right now. I mean, ETH DeFi, it has matured quite a bit, especially what you can do in terms of stablecoin yields. If you look at stuff like Infinify or MezzanineFi upcoming, like these are some products bringing these TradFi primitives on chain, and I think that's like a very healthy sign of maturation. Solana, I mean, the trenches seem kind of dead to me. I mean, Owner is much more active on that side than I am. I mean, I'm still holding a couple of the like OG memes who are like either genuinely funny or who still have like an ongoing community, but it's not something I have like the patience and the enthusiasm to look at day by day. On the Hyperliquid side of things, like the thing that I find a little bit not sketchy, but that makes me think of it critically, is that most of the DeFi use cases you see there are essentially just another iteration of what you already have on ETH layer 1 and like some of the other EVM chains. And now it's just a new ecosystem with a couple new tokens, maybe a couple new participants, and like one or the other like base yield generation mechanisms coming from the hype token. But most of it is still the same, and the forefront of innovation in terms of like capital efficiency, duration stuff that is still happening on ETH mainnet. On base, I mean, like you can argue about the like usage being organic there, but like I don't care. Like I think this discussion is overrated. Like Coinbase has one of the largest distribution networks in terms of like users, and if you compare it to Binance, Binance could theoretically push a higher absolute number of users onto BNB chain. Like the average Coinbase user being situated in the US or in the Western world is much more well capitalized, arguably more financially literate. So I think in terms of like these serious quote unquote financial applications are much more suited for Base than, for example, on BNB. So I think it definitely is going to be worth paying attention to Base here and there.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. I mean, just from my side, real quick, I think the only thing that's relevant in my mind is Bitcoin, stablecoins, Ethereum mainnet, especially for deep liquidity, Hyperliquid core only for perps. I'm not sure about Hype EVM. Like I don't know.
Yeah, yet to be seen.
Yeah, and then everything like Tranches or Casino, I think is still Solana, and everyone else has like a week or two where they come up with something. Does not feel organic. Like Max said, doesn't have to be. But I'm yet to see kind of like real communities that sustain on Base or Avalanche or something. I mean, these are all like good ecosystems. I'm quite excited about kind of a multi-chain world. But I think really like Solana, Ethereum, Hype Core, Bitcoin stablecoins. That's crypto in a nutshell in my mind.
And
Unless we get back to a state
and Anoma,
of last cycle where people are like genuinely believing in the upside or the vision or idea of some new product for like a time horizon that is longer than a few weeks. I think until we see that, there's no meta that is really going to feel organic to any of the more seasoned users, because the default state of any market participant that has been around for longer than like a year or two is you like run it up 50% to 3x, maybe like the downside upside ratio in meme coins is a little different, but after that you just exit, and like the default state of the market has become cynicism, PvP, and zero-sum thinking. And until we get back to like these completely delusional price targets and like genuinely believing into the tech, I think organic behavior is yet to return.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that many a time, and I find in this space, people always find some reason to get excited, whether it's genuine or not. I think it's also just an expression of like market risk. When we're risk on, people find a way to get excited about crypto, whether anything useful has been done or not. But I do think this time around, there are some shots on goal that I do find quite unique. Like I think Stripe launched a chain. I think this could be very cool. It's credible. Actually, we used to work with the guy who's running crypto there in hedge fund world. So I think there's credible stuff happening is where I'll leave that.
Amazing. Well, Mike, thanks so much for taking the time. We're at the hour.
Yeah.
Super fun. Super excited. Would love to do this again, maybe after launch or shortly before. Yeah, was a blast.
You guys know where to find me. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man.
Oh, no, Max, take it easy, guys. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Very nice. Thanks, everybody.